This podcast is brought to you by Kiwi Design, the leader in MetaQuest and VR accessories. And now you can deck out your device while supporting the podcast. The MetaQuest 2 is a great headset, but do you ever feel things could be a bit more comfortable? Well, we have the solution for you. With lens protectors, controller grips, face covers, head straps, link cables, headset stands, and more, including my two personal favorites, the top version controller grips with added weight and an extended handle, and the Kiwi upgraded Elite strap. Let's be real, we've all whacked our controller. Don't be the guy messaging Oculus support for your own mistake or waiting weeks for an out-of-stock controller. Visit the link in our show notes to prepare yourself today. After visiting the link in our show notes, make sure to use the promo code Ruff Talk VR at checkout, all one word, to take full advantage of your savings. And make sure to click the link in our show notes so the podcast gets credit and you help support us. Remember, whatever you need, Kiwi has you covered. Hey, welcome to this episode of Ruff Talk VR. Today we're joined with a guest that I'm so excited to talk to.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, we just reviewed his game last week and we had an absolute blast. I gave it a 95, you gave it a 90.
I did.
So clearly we loved it. You know, last week we reviewed Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu, which it's a VR fighting game that definitely plays honor to those classic, Kung Fu martial arts movies that, everybody grew up with.
Right, like I said in the podcast, there was a specific, when I read that in the details, like I knew there was a specific character I had in mind that I remembered from the movies I used to watch in the late 70s and probably early 80s. And then boom, there the guy was. So I was like, all right, I already knew this was going to be pretty damn good.
And I think I even remember you saying that if they didn't have that, you went in a little like bitter, like, oh man, they got to have him. And then boom, there he was. So
yeah, no, they have literally everything, but I don't want to distract from the creator himself. So.
Absolutely. So today we're joined with Ben Olding, who's the creator of the game. So we have a million things to ask Ben. So just right off the top, Ben, do you mind to give a little introduction for our listeners in case they've never played your game or they have no idea who you are?
Okay, well, I'm Ben Olding, solo developer, made a Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu, just had the intro, which is a very sort of personal game to me, based on all the things that I love, that I've put together in one package that I enjoy. It's a game for me, and hopefully everyone else will too. Or well, you will know. You said in your review, if you see it and you think, yeah, that looks like the kind of thing for me, then it probably will be. If it doesn't, then it won't be.
So, I mean, I guess the first thing I got to ask is, you grew up with these style of movies pretty heavily, right? They had to be, somebody to be able to get.
Yeah, I want to know what was the, everyone makes a game or an experience for a reason, but this one is pretty specific.
Yeah, and you mentioned it's very personal to you, so it sounds like there's a lot of good memories with those type of movies for you.
Yeah, well, I think I didn't really so much grow up with them. It was more when I was about sort of 18, 19. I watched I watched things everyone watches, like The Matrix and Karate Kid when I was a child. I really liked, and then I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, and that kind of got me into more the sort of the Chinese specific thing. And then I just got a habit of buying a Kung Fu DVD every week, and I was just binging them every week from then on. And then around that time, I was getting into making games as well, like flash games at the time, just because that was the way I could make games and get them out to people. So I made a Dragon Fist flash game. That was probably my first proper game, if you like. That was in about 2004, and yeah, so I made a few of those in the 2000s and left it for a while. But then when VR came back and I started playing some VR fighting games, I thought there was a missing niche, if you like, which was the Kung Fu movie genre. Well, I would say that even with the fighting games, there was, everyone knows them. There's sort of Blade and Sorcery that I played, so sword fighting game, and then there was Creed that I played that really kind of made me think, yes, I could do something like this. I love the Creed game. I thought it was, I think what's got in common with Dragon Fist is that it's it's like a movie theme. And I always like when you got that knockout and you heard the Rocky theme play, it just felt, it was more than just a dry simulator, So I thought I'd approach that angle. but also, you know, the games that I did grow up with, like sort of Street Fighter 2, Mortal Kombat, and things like that. I wanted to try and, you know, approach that angle rather than the, you know, the boxing simulator or, you know, martial arts simulator, if you like. So I've tried to do both of those things.
No, and I want to jump back a little. Something I heard you said solo. You're a solo team, solo dev.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I have worked with other people in the past on the Flash games, you know, and but as a sort of Flash died, you know, the plugin got killed off, and the whole industry kind of you know, I almost had to, you know, I didn't have the money to play with that I used to, so it's almost quite liberating being able to just do it all myself again. You know, if I wanted to add a character, I could just add that character. I didn't have to think, oh, that will cost me another $1,000 or whatever. You know, I could just do stuff on a whim and get it in there quickly. Yeah.
For a solo dev,
and people really should let that sink in if they've played it or talked to someone who has, or they're going to be playing it, is like, you need to keep in mind that like one human being was able to pull this off makes the game even that much more incredible.
Well, besides there being, you know, 40 characters, a full campaign, multiple game modes, one of the things that impressed me the most is the full body movements of your character and the other person's character.
Oh, yeah.
It's one of the best examples I've seen of that arm tracking, the elbow tracking. What was that like, getting that all working as a solo dev? You know, that's something I've seen a lot of games struggle with, and it worked really smooth in this game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it was a lot of hard work. Yeah, getting it all feeling right and getting the sort of physics feeling nice. You know, probably I kept going back to it again and again. It was probably a year of effort. You know, coming. You know, every time I thought, right, yep, that's good. You know, I play it for another month and then think, oh, it feels a bit rubbery, or, you know, that kind of thing. And to be honest, still not completely happy with it. Still could be better. But, you know, I just think with a game, you just have to, there's a point where you just have to release the thing. I could easily still have not released the thing and be tweaking settings but well, you know, I have been, but after launch.
Yeah, and even, I mean, there was just a Halloween update with the zombies too, you know?
Well, and listen, some of the best games that we've played and the devs that we've spoken to all have that same exact kind of mentality about their project. Is like, it's not finished in my head, but you reach a point where, you know, it has to go, you have to do something with it, and then you can work on it from there. But it's that same exact passion we've heard numerous times.
That perfectionist mentality.
Yeah, perfectionist.
So this game's not anything close to done in your mind. You still have a lot of work that you want to do with it.
Yeah. I think you know, although I probably could sit back and let it do its thing. You know, there's lots of stuff I want. You know, I just want to do on it. Like you know, so after launch, I already added the full body tracking to the Quest version, and although only about 10 people have got full body tracking, it just seemed like it was the kind of game that it was you know, it felt like the perfect game for it. So I just felt like I had to do it, you know, just for the fun of it. And there's sort of multiplayer still to go that I've kind of made tentative start on. But really, I think, you know, I want to see, you know, even if everyone's sick of the game by then, you know, I'd like to see multiplayer in there.
I think any changes, anytime there's an update to a game, always brings people back to it.
Mm-hmm. And by multiplayer, do you mean like PvP, like against each other, or working together?
Yeah, well, I'm hoping to offer both options. So, yeah, I heard you mention that in your review. Yeah, I would. The PvP is difficult, but you know, I think again, I want to see it, and I think that will be the best part of it, especially if I can get all the full body tracking in. I think, like, I saw a news story today about Zenith being the first multiplayer game with full body tracking in, and you know, I almost feel like I missed my opportunity there to be the first one. But you know, I think, you know, again, this game fits well with full body tracking. I think, you know, being able to do kicks and things like that So I'd like to see that at some point in the future.
Well, what's amazing is Zenith is a huge studio. Like the studio behind it, it's a big team. I don't know if I can use the words huge without knowing their full numbers, but I've seen them. They've gotten funding before in the millions, and you're a solo dev, and yet they only beat you by a little bit to be the first one.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more.
That's insane. It's like it took a whole studio with investors and funding to beat you, and it doesn't sound like they beat you by much either. So that's huge.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I'm sure that I'm sure they've done a good job of it, and yeah, without getting too ahead of myself, I haven't actually done it yet, so I may yet fail, but we'll see. We'll see. I'll just, my whole time I've just said I promise that I'll give it a go, even if it ends up that it can't work, then so be it. But at the moment, I'm hopeful and optimistic.
I definitely agree. The game deserves it. So if there's a way to pull it off, not that I have full body tracking, but I don't know if I trust myself.
Yeah, not with this game. I'll be throwing spinning wheel kicks.
Roundhouse kicks.
Like you joke, that's a divorce waiting to happen. I'll be throwing flying knees. I'll be, leg kicks, and it'd be too much.
I've kicked the desk. I remember when I did an axe kick, and I caught the cable of the headset, and pulled my head down. That's why I don't know if you saw the safety circle feature in the game. Yeah, that's why I added that, because I wanted to be able to make sure I didn't get too close to my desk or the monitor or anything. Small children.
Yeah. Anybody who's ever trained martial arts and thrown kicks before, they're give them 10 minutes with full body tracking this game, and they're going to go too far, Oh,
God. Yeah. No, I have had someone already told me they kicked their monitor. Yeah, it is a little bit worrying. I don't want people to damage themselves or their house. But,
hey, at least you won't break a controller.
No, but when we had discussed the full body tracking potential with this game, and instantly knew that, like,
not in my house. I need a gymnasium.
Bad shit could happen, but if you have the floor space and the
if you have
absolutely same thing with the boxing games.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because you'll keep pushing forward, and eventually there's going to be a wall, or more likely a TV set.
Yep. Yeah, nothing worse than hitting that wall with the controller, and you just feel your fingers get sandwiched. You're like,
yeah. Well, do you see that yoga mat I've got stuck to my wall? That's my tip. I did that after because you've got the finger jabs in the game. I finger jabbed the wall, and that that hurt quite a lot.
Jesus.
So I thought I've got to pad up my room. I could do with a bit more for the full body tracking. I could do with a bigger room, really, but I have to make do for now.
Yeah, Stratus over here loved the finger pokes. He was sitting there just jabbing people in the eye, going for.
Because it's, to me, a lot of granted, you can throw punches if you want, but to me the idea was to get as karate as possible in it, or martial arts, pre Brazilian jiu-jitsu being what it is. But like that stuff was legit. Like those eye pokes, poke someone's eyeball out,
or a jab
punch, fucking throw punches and stuff like that. And so I appreciated that.
I think if I had full body tracking, I'd be throwing more elbows and kicks just because of safety space. But imagine just a nice tight elbow. Ooh, be so good.
Yeah, well, I haven't actually got the elbows. I've got, with the full body tracker, it's got the waist tracker and the feet tracker. I haven't actually got as far as doing an elbow tracker as well, but maybe I will, as you mentioned it. Yeah, now you mentioned it, maybe I should. So they're expensive, aren't they? The trackers. I've only got 3 of them. I kind of hope that maybe in future someone will bring out like a new generation of trackers. Like I wondered, like with the those new Quest Pro hand trackers, they got cameras in them. So I wondered if ever they'll make some like ankle trackers or something that will use inside out tracking. Yeah, seems possible, but I haven't heard anything. So
that would be a day one purchase for me. I see that roll out on the market. I'm like, I would have to get that.
Again, I'd be scared of
what it could
and
bring.
I can't blame somebody for making a product. I just know myself, and
and some people
do
have
the ability to throw kicks, and I know my play space well, and I know my TV's going right into the wall. It's just going to happen. There's no way around it.
Well, even we were playing a simple game, Loco Dojo, with a friend, and they knocked over a TV.
Oh yeah.
swinging sausages around, hitting bats. So
Yeah, because you're using like nunchucks.
Oh, yeah,
so it's
yeah.
not just this game specific. It's anything with big
Yeah,
movement, you know?
To me, the more immersed I feel in it, even without the full body tracking, when I play this, I'm, it's with intent.
I'm in character. Like,
Yeah.
audibly, I'm talking shit. I'm my
yeah.
character while I'm so
No,
immersed.
We party chat the whole time.
It's funny. We're full of laughters. And with
I love the gong in the main room too,
yeah,
because you can actually hit it. And I have a clip of me doing it, kind of
Yep.
beating it,
starting with one hand, going to two.
Yeah.
So with
The detail in this game is incredible.
right, even the small interactable objects. Sorry to cut you off. I was gonna say, like, you can just pick up plates and kind of like frisbee them at people. It's pretty detailed, more than somebody might think on the surface the first time they play.
A lot of those things I think of as a kind of Sunday afternoon, like, if I don't want to be bug fixing or something, I'll make a gong or something. It's the kind of thing I'll do on a whim. So the gong wasn't in the game at launch, not on Steam. So that was a later thing. I remember there's that level with those drums as well. Did you see them? Sort of big war drums, and I think I just remember having a pleasant Sunday, modeling some drums and adding some sound effects.
So a question I'm dying to ask: does the lore of this game, like the universe of it, tie into the earlier Dragon Fist Flash games?
Yeah, it does. It does. So a lot of the characters are the same. So you can go back to if you look on YouTube and look up Dragon Fist 2 or Legends of the Dragon Fist, that's the first one. You'll see some very crudely drawn Flash characters, but they're often but they're the same ones. But so with this game, I didn't really make this game for nostalgic purposes, but at the same time, these are all my old characters, so it kind of felt it's like a personal game. I see my old characters in there. It feels pleasing to me, even if other people won't know them. There'll be the odd person out there that recognizes them. I think.
Well, for anybody who played those Flash games, it has to be a cool experience to be like, that's the character I used in 2D. Now here we go. And I mean,
Flash games were the best.
yeah, I don't think I ever played Dragon Fist, but I did play one of yours I mentioned on the review called Spartacus. I saw that in your. I didn't realize that was you when I was like, oh man, I remember that one. Nice little side scroller, right? And you're just a badass Spartan.
Yeah, I think that was Achilles. If it was mine.
Yes, Achilles. Sorry, not Spartacus.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I think there was another game called Spartacus.
Yeah, I mentally.
Yeah,
I was
no, I
quite
remember.
the Flash game guy.
Yeah, I remember Achilles was probably the first Flash game I made any money off. I think so the old Dragon Fist games, like it was all just a hobby, and then Achilles was the first time I got a kind of sponsorship deal. I think I made sort of $3,000 off it, and and that was the start of my professional journey, if you like.
From Flash games to VR, I love that story. So,
I'm surprised there aren't more Flash developers making VR at this stage. Because I think there was a lot of good ideas back then that could translate nicely into VR now. And like I saw, do you remember the last Clockwinder? The
building game.
Yeah, well, I remember a lot of Flash games like that in the past, where you would record a character and then you would you record your moves and then you would play again and interact with yourself. So I almost felt like that was kind of an old Flash idea, and sort of the tower defense games and things. And I think at the moment there aren't. I think this could well change, but there isn't all the huge, $1 million games coming out, or the big, like you get on the PlayStation and things like that. So there's still room for the little guy, at least for the time being.
I totally agree with that, and that's what's inevitably going to happen. Down the road is the huge money making studios are going to come in, but it's going to take everybody laying that foundation, and obviously they'll have their foot already in the door, but.
And I mean, now's the time with App Lab, how it is, you just need to hit these minimum requirements, which are not nearly as extensive as the official store. It's, just make sure your game has what
gives you the opportunity to get your product out there and
get the foot in the door. Say, all right, now I know I've done a VR game. I have experience putting the game on the store. It's very rare. I think I see a developer come to VR and their first game that they've ever released in VR is on the official store. It seems like most developers' first game
Within
get
the
that.
past couple of years, yeah.
Mhm.
Once they changed their criteria per se.
Mhm.
So I want to ask a question about the characters because each one seems to have its own trademark movements to the martial arts that you're up against.
Drunken
Yeah.
movement, Tai Chi.
Yeah, did you program that or was that like motion cap and stuff?
They're all me doing it with VR controllers. So they're essentially controlled the same way that you control your character. So they are motion captured, but they're motion captured by me wearing a headset doing it in this room. So some people have kind of criticized that a bit because it's not the traditional animation, and it does mean it's not 100% realistic. But the way I saw it is kind of like a fair, I want to aim for that kind of fair fight kind of thing. Like when you play 11 table tennis, you don't feel that the opponent's doing anything different to you, or they can't do anything different to you. And I was trying to get that same thing, so it felt like almost like a multiplayer game, but against the computer, if you like.
Well, I gotta say, if anybody plays a game that there's characters that can shoot, blue balls as like blue magic balls, and then you go, well, it's not realistic. They shoot magic balls. It's nothing about. It's not supposed to be realistic. It's supposed to be like if you go to watch those old martial arts movies, you'd be like, well, they did that move inaccurate. It's like
No, every one of them is inaccurate. Trust. I mean, they're great movies.
So
I freaking love them, but 99.9% out of the
I'm not going into this game for realism.
you see one jump where a guy gets hit in the chest
Yeah,
and
and
he
he goes
flies
just-
80 feet across the room. I mean, those were the movies.
Yeah, my complaint wouldn't be, well, he should have had his left leg a
I
little bit.
appreciated the movements. 'Cause
Yeah. And that's huge. That's amazing that it wasn't actual tracked or like, you did like pre-animation program, that you just did it with the controllers, because I think that speaks volume to how good you've done the leg movement, the arm movement. That's something I've seen a lot of different.
It's got its shortcomings, which I can certainly see. Like when you watch someone walking about using a third on Steam, you can have a spectator camera, and sort of the walking animation isn't quite as good because it's programmatic rather than animated. But I see this in other games. I think other games will. You said something on the review about kind of, I can't remember what term you said, but it was about the jank.
Beautiful jank, I think
Beautiful
I called
jank.
it.
Yeah, right. So like the walking, I would consider a bit jank. It doesn't quite seem like normal walking. But I'd see what other games will do is they won't show it. You'll just see the first person. So I'll see other similar games, and they will get around the problem by hiding it, if you know what I mean. So I think
throw a towel over it. Yeah,
right. Yeah, exactly. So I think sometimes you can you almost get a bit of jank by sometimes it's more fun to have the jank, if you see what I mean.
Yep.
Well, that's what I think.
That's why it's beautiful jank. If it was janky, I would say, ooh, that's bad jank. But there's sometimes the jank makes it better. Like the spectator mode that you mentioned that you can go to in Steam, and you can actually watch the fight. Like they do have that on the standalone. Just you can't walk around when you're viewing the spectator mode as the player. But that was one of my favorite aspects of the game.
I was blown away at how detailed it is when you're looking at it too.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. Again, it's something that it's not appealed to everyone. Some people would say it's sort of not immersive. That's some people for VR, sort of immersion is everything. But I think because when you're in the character, there's not so much difference between playing as the different characters. There's the special moves that you mentioned, and there are a few perks and bonuses you get for certain characters, but there's nothing forcing you to do any specific move. So I thought, if you can occasionally see yourself from the outside, you get to you may do a bit of role playing, and you can see your own poses and things like that, which I think that's all quite good fun, but can't please everyone with it.
Yeah. Hey, I was gonna say, every time I knock somebody out, I'm doing the DX, suck it chop. You got to, raise the roof a little bit. Why not?
Well, it's still rocking a 4.9 on
The App
App
Lab
Lab
store.
Store, and we reviewed it last week, and it did pick up another. I'm guessing a 5-star, and definitely another written review. So I mean, it's got some momentum.
Yeah, and exactly what we said during the review, and like you referenced at the start, somebody who's going to buy this game and play it, it's because they're interested in those type of martial arts games. Like, if you're looking for this style of game, this game's going to scratch that itch.
Mm-hmm.
So something I'm curious to know. I know you mentioned there's not a huge amount of difference in between each characters. To me, there is for immersion and roleplay reasons, but
I believe so.
I use that kind of default first character you have, the bald monk looking guy, But for you, with 40 characters, who does Ben Olding use in his own game?
Well, I always like Master Cheng. So he's the one. He's the master at the Cheng school, and he's got sort of purple outfit and a long ponytail. So it might be the incorrect. That might be a culturally wrong term, but it was a haircut that in the Qing dynasty in China was a mandatory haircut to sort of show your allegiance with the government at the time. Or so I understand it. My Chinese history is a bit rusty. Most of my knowledge comes from these movies and things. But that character, he was inspired by Wong Fei Hung, who's a sort of Chinese folklore hero. And there was one of the first movies I watched was with Jet Li playing Wong Fei Hung, and that was almost the movies that made me fall in love with it. So I always like playing as him. His special move is the no shadow kick, which is it is a real move, but it's all in the movies. It's often a bit overblown, and the idea is you're supposed to be able to kick faster than your shadow. So in the game, sort of time slows down, but you can still kick at the same speed. So you can do a real nice slow motion, Matrix style kick, and that's what I always find that pleasing. So you can like do a jumping kick, freeze time, and then boot him in the head with lots of time to think. But I know he's not the most popular character in the game. I think from watching YouTube videos, I see that the Billy Lee character is by far, you almost watch it. People say, you see all these characters, people think, which one shall I pick? And they nearly always go with Billy Lee, as they would.
Oh, I murked that guy. I went in there with bad intention. That's the Bruce Lee inspired character, right?
Billy Lee? That's right. That's right. Yeah.
I went in there throwing haymakers against him.
So does every character? I'm pretty impressed with just the background of that one character. Is every single character that you create have a tie-in background to why you created them?
Or her? To a varying extent, if you like. I didn't really start the game thinking. I didn't have all the characters planned out at the start. I just started making them, and at the start it was almost a bit led by the scenery. So you had like the bamboo forest level, and that had I've got you've seen them, the characters with the sort of rice hats, triangular hats in there. So that was inspired by a movie called The House of Flying Daggers, which was always had a nice look about. That was from the early 2000s. And so at the start, I was going to make each level have their own kind of team. So I made loads of Flying Dagger characters there. And then the Wing Chun school had loads of Wing Chun. But then sort of later on, I kind of changed them to be a bit more colourful and a bit more unique each. So yeah, they kind of evolved. But yeah, if you were to ask me about most of the characters, I think I'll be able to give you some background on them.
Dude, 40 is a lot of characters.
It was more than I thought.
And like, did you design all the artwork on them yourself? Is that something you had to kind of outsource out? Because there is no, like, you can distinguish each character just visually. It's not like, oh, that one looks exactly like the last guy. It's like, no, this is 40 unique looking characters. To me, my brain goes, that's a lot of work. I was guessing asset packs, but did you design this all?
No, I did make them all. I used a program called Make Human, which is which gets you a sort of base, naked human to work with. So you can like choose things like the eye size and the nose depth and lots of sliders. So I'd start with that. I'd slide a few things about to get it looking vaguely like I wanted, and then I'd make the clothes to in 3D modeling Blender to go on that. But yeah, it was a learning process for me. I hadn't really modeled clothes before. I had to learn a lot of things for this, but that is all. It's great fun. Like I say, it was liberating not having to go and get someone else to do it. I think the downside, of course, is that the graphics don't look as good as if you had a 3D modeling guru on it. But I'm hoping in the future that we might, in talking to the publishers about it, we might. Yeah, I don't want to say too much because I don't want to jinx it, but we might be able to get someone to like someone that knows what they're doing to come in and spruce them up a bit, give everything a bit of a facelift. I ultimately I don't want the game. I want the game to look like it does. I don't want it to look like a different game, but I'm sure someone would come in and tidy up some of the hairstyles and things like that.
Well, that's impressive for somebody without that background in, like you said, never made clothes before digital.
I'm thinking of the finished product.
It's amazing. It never stuck out to me as like bad graphics or like bad character models. Mm-hmm. In fact, to your point, you were able to tell which character that you were looking for just visually. It's not like, oh, I can see the inspiration, but I kind of got to squint, use my imagination to make it work. It looks accurate.
I think the when you put the emphasis on like the character being defined by their impressive hat or something like that, it's a bit easier to do than if you're trying to accurately model an actor's eyebrows or something like that. Like if I was to try and make Donnie Yen, well, I did it with Billy Lee. I was pleased that people recognized Billy Lee as a Bruce Lee. Someone said he was a bit like one of those 80s Bruce Lee knockoffs that you got, but in a way that kind of just fits perfectly. So I was pleased about that. But trying to make someone actually look like someone is difficult. But if like with the Flying Daggers people, they had their sort of green outfits and their triangular hats, and making a triangular hat is, like I say, easier than accurately modeling a real face.
Yeah,
I have no complaints over any of it.
No, I knew that was Bruce Lee right away. If anything, you can make the joke the wish at Bruce Lee, but I knew right away.
And amazingly, there was only a couple areas that, I wasn't even critical about, but I was like, okay, aesthetics, the sound is good and all that, but I'm like, the graphics, I think I gave it was a 15 out of 20. So it's like to hear that there might even be future plans for bringing a 3D renderer or something, and that obviously goes up to a 20
pretty quickly.
Yeah,
when we have tied scores,
not
at
that
that
a 90
point.
and 95 is a bad score at all.
No, out of 100.
No.
Well, I appreciated your comments on that. Yeah, I do appreciate that the graphics could be better, but I think a lot of it was I was just trying to sort of this time last year I wasn't selling the game. I was a Flash game developer when Flash didn't exist, so I was just trying to make something so it just felt like that was just the shortest way to make something that would do the job. Aside from you mentioned asset packs, maybe I could have bought a bunch of Kung Fu Fighters, but it's hard if you do that. It's hard to get exactly what you want. You have to get the if you search on a 3D site for Kung Fu Master, you'll get one that looks like the stereotypical Kung Fu Master. You'll get a Shaolin monk, you'll get a Bruce Lee, and that'll be about it. If I searched for characters from House of Flying Daggers, I think there'll be a fewer options to pick from. And also, if they're all done by different people, then you end up with lots of different art styles in one game. So almost, I'd almost prefer they, again, bit janky, but they all look, like one thing, or they look like one game rather than 20 games sellotaped together.
40 different characters that all blatantly don't look like there's a tie.
Yeah, they look like different games.
I just got to give props.
Yeah, and well, I mean, not for nothing, doing it yourself, I'm sure you learned quite a bit about the design aspect of it. You probably picked up a couple skills through the time of developing it, so there's always that perk too.
Yeah, it's really satisfying learning to do this stuff. And yeah, like I say, it makes it a lot quicker. You know, I wouldn't have done 40 if I'd had to pay someone for each character. Then to say, right, I want 40 characters. You know, that would cost a lot of money. So almost, yeah, you get 40 bargain bin characters rather than 6 slick ones.
Hey,
last year I wouldn't have been able to afford someone to do one of them, you know. So, you know, I had to do it myself.
So I guess the $1 million question then is, how long did this game take? I think you've referenced a year ago you weren't working on it. What was the total time that from start to finish?
I started on it in early 2020, sort of as the virus kicked off, you know, the pandemic kicked off. I had, you know, I was at home more because all my martial arts classes I was going to all ceased. So this was almost a way for me to, well, it gave me back some time, and I started making this as a, you know, way to fill that void, if you like. So yeah, so it was probably a couple of years. Now, when did it release? It was released last December on Steam, and then later on in the year on App Lab. So probably it was a couple of years up until the release on Steam. So it's probably now getting on for 3 years. And yeah, it may it seems like there's probably going to be another year in it till I'm done with it, I would say, if I'm ever done with it.
Yeah, before you feel like it's, you know, a finished product, maybe you're not done with bug fixes and additional updates. Hey, as somebody who trains a lot of martial arts as well, I sympathize with you for, you know, that COVID period when everything shut down. As, you know, you're in that daily routine of martial arts classes, and then it just gets pulled out from underneath you. It can be quite a lot mentally, I'll say, for mental health and such.
Yeah. So what was your martial? Do you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Did you say? Was that?
Yep. I train about 5 days a week. How about yourself?
Well, I haven't really gone back to it since COVID. I mean, before I was doing kung fu, so tiger kung fu, and so I was doing that twice a week, and I was doing jiu-jitsu, but Japanese jiu-jitsu. I was doing that a couple of times a week, and I was doing qigong, which is like a tai chi, so more a health art. So I was doing that as well. And then, like I say, since pandemic's finished, I haven't really got back into it yet. But you know, I'm partly because of the game. You know, I haven't really had a moment to. I haven't had a moment to think about it. I started recently doing a bateau. I don't know how you say it. Batudo, which is a sort of samurai sword art. I saw an advert for that, so I went and gave that a go. That was quite fun. Moving forward, I'm not sure. I'll probably go back to doing kung fu again, and maybe jiu-jitsu again. I don't know. I'll probably end up doing it all again. But
I was just wondering. I'm like, where's this guy have the time for this?
Yeah,
there's no time anymore.
Selfishly, I hear you training, you know, sword fighting martial art. I'm thinking, oh, the next game from Ben Olding is going to be a kick-ass sword fighting game.
Well, it did cross my mind, to be honest. And also, I mean, that's another idea for Dragon Fist. I mean, it doesn't 100% fit, but I did wonder about having a weapons sort of mode. It'd be a bit of an addition, but you know, in Kung Fu you get quite a lot of different exotic weapons, and you know, it might be fun to use the engine again to do some sword fighting, or you know, or staff fighting, or you know, samurai sword fighting, you know, the rest of it. But you know, that's I wouldn't want to promise that, but I'd like to give it a go, you know.
Be locked, you know, blade to blade, and then sneak in an eye poke real quick. Mess with the wrong guy, you know.
I love the idea, especially if you're using traditional weaponry like the sais or the tonfas and such.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just, you know.
Man, this is seeds for the next one, you know.
Yeah,
I
mean, hey,
I'd be all
people
over
like
it.
to kill in VR, so I mean, giving you a bit, especially like
Well,
fluid moving AI.
what's unique about this one, it's, you mentioned in the beginning, there's Creed for the boxing games. There's also Thrill of the Fight. Boxing is
Yeah.
pretty covered. We have these full or I guess murder sims with blade and sword. So you have the sword fighting sim with swordsman, but there's no martial
Murder
arts.
sims.
Yeah, murder.
We don't
sim,
have
yeah.
a murder martial arts sim
Yeah.
yet.
No, we don't have a. Yeah, it's not This game isn't sandbox. There's a
Nope.
huge campaign to it. I think it would be doing a
Not that
disservice
that
to call
didn't
it.
cross my mind when we were playing it.
It's
Like if it was like, wow, this would be like,
well with the 1v1 modes, and then there's an arcade mode. It's like it's not. It's simulation almost. Not
Yeah.
sandbox does the word does the game an injustice, but this little niche hasn't been hit at all. It was a wide open market, and then you did a flying kick open to open that door.
I remember that before release, I was I was dreading every day hearing about some martial arts VR game be announced, and they were going to take me to it, or Mortal Kombat VR or something. It was like every morning I was panicking about that appearing, but it didn't, or it hasn't yet. Or
No.
there's another game, Shaolin versus Wu-Tang. There's a game, flat screen game, that's a similar theme, very good. I was a bit worried he was going to beat me to it, but he hasn't yet. I bet he will at some point. He'll come out with something at some point.
And then when it comes, he'll be in the same cycle that you're in now, where it's out, but I have 1,000 things I still want to do. Probably another year before it's really done.
Yeah. It's been a intense year, certainly, and it is quite exhausting. But I think I'm hoping now I'm getting more towards the end of the list of bugs and things people come back with. I'm hoping now to start doing new stuff like the multiplayer. Maybe that weapon. Try some new things. And then that'll make it exciting again. And hopefully, re-energize me. Well, that's what I'm thinking. I'll tell you my other plans. I'm hoping to add more characters as well. It didn't have quite enough characters, I think. Well, I thought like making the characters, like I said, quite fun. So I've sort of started making a few, and and it's kind of fun again. So I'm hoping to maybe do like a character pack. So I was thinking almost a bit like a DLC, except I won't make it DLC. I'll just put it in the game, I think, as a kind of extra thing. And also, you mentioned in the review you'd like to see a character editor.
Mm-hmm. That's my selfish wish.
Yeah, well, I've started on that as well, because I think this could be good. I mentioned about how I recorded in the moves using the trackers. So all that functionality is kind of built into the game itself. So what I'm hoping is that when you design your character, you'll be able to also record in your own moves, like I did. So then you'll be able to sort of fight yourself a bit. And I think that's quite a potentially exciting idea that people don't think of. And I'm hoping it'd be like a bit of a asynchronous multiplayer thing there. Like maybe you'll be able to make a character and then share it with a friend, and then they'll be able to fight your character, something like that.
Oh my goodness!
Almost all your ideas, right?
It's like the dreams.
They're all like shit nobody's really done.
No.
You get what I'm saying?
Dude, if there's create a character feature with this, and then like one of my favorite boxing games of all time.
Not just create a character, but create a character that you can then
share. Yeah,
pre-program the move for, dude.
One of the best boxing games ever, I'll say, is Fight Night Champion, and that had a boxer share feature. And that kept that game alive so much longer than it should have. Because, if the game didn't have a character, example, let's say they didn't have Floyd Mayweather, you go on the boxer share, people are making a Floyd Mayweather, then there's all these fun creative characters. I think that gives so much replay value in a game like this.
I was thinking also, like I was imagining before the game released, I was going to get a lot of sort of martial arts snobs coming out and saying, "Oh, that's not accurate Wing Chun," or or something like that. So my answer to that was going to be, well, if I put this in, then you can make your own. You can do your own accurate style, or people able to share their own lesser known kung fu styles or different martial arts within the engine, or that's the dream at least, or that's the hope.
That would be phenomenal. Yeah, but you'd have like legit karate masters and shit coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh yeah, I'll record some stuff for a
Yeah,
little bit."
why not? If everybody can now use it, it's open source character creation. It's insane.
So you know what I'm dying to know, and I might be dreaming, but I'm convinced that the female AI is harder than the male AI. Am I off, or is it really the opposite? Because it feels like some of those women I had to fight were
They're fast and they go for the lethal spots. Like I kept getting critical
I
hitted.
blinded one, and she still. I mean, she had the eyes closed, but she was still coming at me to.
Well, they're all the same AI wise, but what makes them difficult often is their moves basically. So you have that percentage. So you have the 0 to 100%, and when it's at sort of 100%, they're sort of going all out, but only with their moves that they've got. So I would say sometimes some of the move sets are more difficult than others, or depending on what your approach is. Like the one I liked is what you mentioned, the default monk, Ling Hao, he's called. He does a kind of sort of a monkey style of kung fu, which has a lot of changing height. And what I always like with him is you do a big hook punch and he'll just duck it and then come back up from underneath. And so I had a comment on the Steam forum about that, saying, "Oh, that's never happened at my Taekwondo class." And it's like, yeah, but that's because Taekwondo class they're not doing monkey style, or so to try and give you these different challenges that you might not get at your local class. Because I think that's the thing, is that when you do martial arts, you learn to fight with people doing the same thing as you often, or at least they've got the same sort of training as you. So with something like this, I hoped it could give you a few different challenges that you might not otherwise come across. So some of these styles, I would say, maybe some of them are maybe designed a bit more about that challenge rather than trying to be an accurate representation of the style. So some are more authentic than others, whereas some of them, I remember there was the character Moon in there. She has a kind of stance like this, which may be a bit unorthodox, but that was early on. It's because I was getting a lot of big haymakers in, that seemed like an easy way to win. So I thought, well, I'll make her stance like that, and then you can't do that haymaker. You have to do something else. Go on.
I was gonna say haymaker body shots was my way to win against the 100% difficulty people. Those last couple, like Fang Chang, I think his name was, or something like that. I worked that body haymaker style, liver punch left. But
yeah, I enjoyed listening to you talk about your different tactics you use.
Oh, if we had recording of our party chat, you'd be dying laughing. We got silly.
Especially with we were joking, like, this is a lot more than 100%.
Yeah,
this is more like 120%.
I was like, dude, I'm swinging at this guy, I'm hitting him, and his health is barely moving.
I was dying laughing when you were fighting him. No, literally tears in my eyes laughing.
I was like, this is rigged, man. I don't think I'm supposed to be doing damage to him.
I'm hitting him and nothing's happening.
In terms of sort of damage to them, I was saying I'm trying to be fair. I think if you're playing on harder difficulty, so the hardest level, they still haven't got any advantage over you. So they're not stronger, or they haven't got more health than you, or anything like that. Other than, of course, that they don't get tired, and when you get to the bosses, they do get a bit of a health boost, just because they're the
boss.
Bosses. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even when there's multiple of them, they get a bit balanced by having their health reduced and their lives reduced to kind of balance it a bit. I think when there's multiple of them, normally as well, they're the easier styles. They're supposed to be more the henchmen rather than the skilled masters, if you like. They're a bit easier to read.
But that's kind of how those martial arts movies went too. It's like you go through the mass amount of people, you take out a little wave of them, and then that last guy that you unlock, of course, it's going to be a solo dude. He's the head of whatever environment,
Yeah, the guy who stands quietly at the back, just breaking a beard. Yeah.
And I did appreciate all the voice lines that each character had. You know,
Oh yeah,
several
yeah.
different lines. What was the voice acting like that for? You know, was it one person who did them all? You know, what was that aspect like?
I think I got about 6 people to do them, 6-ish. There's one female actress or actor who did all the female characters, but she was great. That was the first one I did, and as soon as I heard that, it just sounded like a kung fu movie, or you know, or like the English dub that you get on a modern kung fu DVD. So as soon as I got that, it sold it to me, and it's really fun getting the lines in and then putting them in the game. You know, it really felt like it brought them to life.
And again, people need to know 40 different characters.
Yeah, with different lines, different personalities. You hear the personality in what they're shit talking to you before
Even
you fight
some
them.
boxers in there. There's a
Yeah.
few boxers in there.
The boxing arena might have been, or the boxing gym might have been my favorite environment because I just went in there and cleaned house. I was like, if these guys are just gonna throw hands with me,
Who's the first boxers? The
Timothy
old style. Isn't that like an old style English boxer?
Yeah, that's the Timothy guy. I think that's the guy who pulls the gun out of you or
That's
against
right.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you often get like, okay, so being English, you often get an English guy as in American films as well, but you often get an English guy as the bad guy in Chinese films, like the kind of arrogant colonial person,
Westerner.
Yeah, exactly. So he was kind of trying to bring that across, and yeah, I gave him a bit of a kind of a sort of old English pugilism style. Not that I ever properly studied it, but it was my kind of attempt. He's a left-handed character as well, which gives you a bit of a different aspect on that. And I think that's not all the Westerners, but no. In fact, he's like maybe the nastiest of the Westerners.
And you have them unlocked at default. So, the first thing before I chose what character I'm going to do, I spent 30 minutes reading all the bios and the special abilities and stuff like that. And I was like, oh, man, of course the British guy's the cheater. He's the one who's going to pull the gun out and shoot people during a fight.
Yeah. Yeah, but people reacted well to that gun.
Mm-hmm.
It's and YouTube videos, it's one of those reactions I look out for, as soon as they get shot,
I was tempted to choose him on the beginning because I was like, well, I'm probably going to play more boxing style anyway. And I was like, and you're not going to tell me a gun's not going to be useful? Come on. Whip out a gun during a fight? I imagine it does a bunch of health. I just never actually used him, but I was so tempted.
I was going to say it's supposed to be like a little pocket gun, like a sort of handbag pistol, rather than a Desert Eagle. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh no, I totally forgot. I was listening to you talk, and then trust me, my train of thought disappears when you guys are talking.
Yeah, the worst is if it leaves you midway through a sentence and you're like, I hope it comes back to me by the end of a sentence.
The super important things I can't forget, I make little cliff notes for. But when I have a passing thought that like just pops into my head because of something someone says,
I wish people could see what our notebooks usually look like by the end of a review, or especially an interview. It's like,
oh, it's just jacked.
Yeah. So something that I got to ask, and it's not any disrespect. I think the game, I even said it was 20 out of 20 on value out of my rating. To me, it's worth the cost, but for App Lab, definitely no doubt 40 is a little bit higher on the App Lab price range. How did you decide on that final price?
So say $30.
29.
Sorry.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
Throwing an extra 10 in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I heard you talking about that on the review. I think it's fair to say it's a pricey, it's fairly expensive. I think at the time, I mean, it's hard to value your own game. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to value it at all, or some people are excited, but other people are asking me if it will be free, and I think they're the maybe the people from the Flash game days. They're thinking I used to make Flash games that were free, so maybe it'd be free. But I think it's not a great answer, but I think at the time one of my testers told me, "Oh, you should price it at this at 30." So they told me to believe in myself, and so I took that on board. And I had another one of my old Flash game brethren. He was he was releasing a game at the same time, a flat screen game, and he charged about that. And sort of Creed, I looked at. Creed was about that price at the time on Steam. So that's just a number I picked, really.
No, well, what you said in the beginning is absolutely true. How do you value your own work?
That's the hardest thing in the
That's
world.
so hard. And to me, with the amount of content in it, and especially if there's more content coming and the price doesn't change, it's worth the price. It
Yeah,
was just
you gave
kind
him
of
a 20 and a 20 and
Yeah.
a 20 on. Yeah.
we were just like, oh, if anybody sees it and there's that sticker shock of, oh, because
I'm
we're
actually I'm the guy that kicked him 5 on
on the value.
the value.
Yeah, it's
Not
we're
that it's not worth it. I made that totally clear. It's worth it. I mean, for
we're just spoiled
store
in the,
worthiness, it's definitely a 20.
yeah, we're just spoiled in the VR niche, with game costs and stuff. I think the most expensive game on the official store is $40, which is insane. It's like consoles drop almost $70 games at this point.
Yeah, and that's if you don't get
The
these
special
gold
edition,
packages, you're
yeah.
out $150 or.
So,
The console games, to be fair, they've had millions spent on them now, haven't they?
Mhm.
So I can understand it. And you're right. Maybe if I had priced it at 25, like you said, maybe more people would have bought it. But that's
I
number.
don't.
how do you know though? It's your
Well, when it moves to the official store, the 29 isn't gonna freak anybody out.
No, it makes sense for the amount of content, and if anything, you've left it in the room to like now you can run a sale versus you price it as cheap as you can. How do you ever run a sale on it? You can't, Now you kind of have that
I
room.
think you can't put the price up later on either.
No.
Easier to put it down if
Yeah.
anything.
Nope.
But I mean, I just hope I can continue to add content and make it definitely worth it for the doubters.
So I got $1 million question. Are you content with living on App Lab, or are you gonna make an attempt for the store?
Well, I think that again, like last year, I didn't know if I didn't, it's gone much better than I ever hoped, to be honest. So last year I would have, I just thought I'll just get it out there, see what happens. And I think that even with App Lab, I just thought, people were asking, oh, when's it going to be out on Quest? When they're asking all the time. So I just put it on there and then thought, I hope that someone at Oculus is going to notice it. And I don't know. Let's just say I'm hopeful for the future.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, they notice.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those, when you look at like missing niches on the store, as we already referenced, this is a missing
And
spot.
we've confirmed that that's actually one of the criteria that they'll
Look at is
they'll
how
look at,
saturated
yeah.
is that market of games. As we've learned in the past year, there's a bunch of back end things that the consumers might not realize, like frame rate requirements, especially, and things like that. So, but this is one that I think it's a no brainer for the official store.
Oh yeah, I gave it the 20 out of 20 for. If you threw it on the store tomorrow, I don't think anyone would be disappointed. Again, I don't know the inner workings of the
technical requirements,
technical specs and all that, but
I'll tell you right now, if I bought my headset the first day, I put it on. First game I ever bought was Thrill of the Fight, and then I also bought Drunken Bar Fight. Those were some of my first. You can see what style game I'm going for, right? If I was a new user and I put on a headset and I see Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu, bot day one, and I think those first couple experiences that people get or try when they first get a headset are so important that they're good experiences in the niche that person's looking for. So to not have this on the official store, it's like, no, there's some martial arts fanboy that's not having as good of a first VR experience as he should because he doesn't know that this exists. You know what I mean?
although I would say for a first experience ever, this one might be a little much because of the amount of, you have a lot of options you can pick from. And if you're like me, you're going to go through all the different menu and you're going to look at everything and you want to go, holy shit, well, I don't know what half of these might do.
To me, my problem would be it would set my standard too high. Sorry to cut you off there too. I'd be like, oh, all these games have these settings.
I was going to ask what your first VR experience was. Can you remember?
Yeah, so I did. Well, it depends on what we count too, because to be fair, one of my cousins had this like really bad VR motorcycle thing. It was supposed to be some sort of virtual reality thing. It was probably in like 2002, and like you put it on and it was so like weird colored, and it was just bad. It was like one of those racing games that like you go forward and the people go to the side and you just try to.
Oh yeah.
It was so bad. But besides that, I tried Beat Saber. Geez, probably like a month or two before the Quest 2 came out. And then I was sold right away. But then the first ones I actually bought was Thrill the Fight and Drunken Bar Fight. I'd watched Thrill the Fight for years before I was actually owning a VR headset. I was like, I need that one. For yourself too, I love to ask this question. What was your first VR experience?
Well,
And then do you want to see yours?
I remember just being blown away by the Steam Home. Really, I just remember that just created a big impact on me. And I what was the first thing I bought? I bought the blue thing, you know, with the underwater. You seen that?
I don't think. Maybe probably like when I first got the headset and I was scrolling through, I probably remember more. But at this point, with 100 games reviewed and stuff, no,
it was just you just kind of stand at the bottom of the ocean and watch some fish go past, the whale, that kind of thing. It's like a cinematic thing, but yeah, it's really good. I recommend it even now. I don't, but you know, it's one of the old VR things. You know, about 5 years old, I'd say.
No, I'm definitely. I just saw Stratus make a note over there, and he actually had a very similar answer to you for like what sticks out that like sold you to VR. Wasn't the Oculus Home?
Well, you sold me on it when
I came back raving about Beat Saber.
Yeah, I bought the Quest 2 site, and I never even had tried the
VR
Quest
yet,
1.
no.
But you were like, you know,
hey, I don't like rhythm games the most, and I had a blast with that. So,
but the home screen when I logged into the Quest, I just literally, I think it was like 30 minutes of just
staring at your hands,
taking the headset off for a second and being like, this is unfreaking imaginable. You know, when I was little, I wished and hoped and prayed that, you know, gaming could be like this world that you could go in instead of, you know, Pong at the time. Or
yeah,
whatever,
you've gotten to witness from Pong to VR, standalone VR.
I made my fiance, and she does not like VR, but I'm like, you just got to understand what I'm looking at here. Mm-hmm. This is not, you know, this is our room. Look at this thing. It's just, and then I discovered there were other home environments you could, so it didn't even take playing a game. And I felt like I got my money's worth standing in the stupid home thing.
Mm-hmm. Geez,
yeah, it's great. You know, it'd be nice to get that magic. You know, it reminded me of like playing on a computer game for the first time. You know, it was like coming, you know, that kind of excitement of, I don't know, childhood excitement, like at Christmas.
Yeah, so almost like blissful happiness. Like, you know, you haven't experienced enough VR yet to be jaded or anything like that. Like, even climbing the tower in Population 1 when we first got the headset made my hands
I'd
leak.
Get the shaky legs standing on the edge.
No, that wouldn't happen to me these days. Not nearly close. I climbed that tower not fast enough, you know. But the first time was, oh my god, you
become desensitized to the.
Yeah, and there is something about that magic, you know, in those first couple.
First experiences are everything for sure.
So something I'm dying to ask too is, you know, what's it like, you know, because you've got to experience what it was like being a Flash developer, which you mentioned, you know, Flash games were, unless, you know, very small exceptions, were free games, you know, hosted on like Addicting Games.
There were so many good ones.
Yeah. Remember Newegg, all that, not Newegg, Newgrounds, you know, those Addicting Games. But now you're in a, you know, more of the console market kind of with these headsets where the games are actually selling for a price. You know, what's it like experiencing both business models? Is it nice being able to actually sell your game for a cost per play, or not per play, but, you know, per user?
Yeah. It is nice. To be honest, people are a lot more respectful when they've bought the game. Yeah, it's funny. I guess maybe it's an age thing. Probably I had a lot of kids playing before, you know. There was a lot more, obviously, with the free game. To make money out of a free game back then, I used to think of it as like you need like 1 million plays to make about $1,000. You know, so you had to have a lot of people through. Whereas now, you know, obviously it's less people, so less kind of fame, if you like, but almost less pressure. And like I say, people are a lot more respectful and a lot nicer about it. You know, it's been a nice community, VR. I think everyone appreciates that it's kind of new and, you know, hasn't completely found its feet, and that's led to a nicer class of player on. So, you know, when I released the game, I was expecting like I used to get in the Flash days. I used to call it a barrage of hate, because it would just be like, you know, loads of horrible comments and things like, you know, no matter you know, it's still now the negative comments still sting, and there always are some, but there was a lot less of that this time round than I used to get back in the day, which was a pleasant surprise, to be honest.
No. Oh, again, a 4.9. That's a no joke score.
And I'll go back.
Honestly, I'm amazed by that. I couldn't have ever predicted or dreamed of such a nice reception. You know, so yeah, I'm really happy.
Yes.
I think some of it goes to what you were saying, that it's a niche that doesn't exist, and nobody's done it.
Yeah, so the people I know who like this game, they sound appreciative that it exists. They're like, oh, I'm so happy this is here, you know. So
yeah, I had one review of someone who clearly they didn't like it, but they said they had to give it a positive review because it referenced Twin Warriors with starring Jet Li, which is like a film from the 90s that, you know, largely forgotten, but you know, so in a way, like reference, you know, that kind of nerdy reference to an old Jet Li film just wins over a few people that might not like it otherwise.
And like you've said, Stratus, you know, you had that character in mind, you log in, you see him, oh, you're sold. It's like a instant +5.
Most definitely.
So you know, I know we're passing over the hour mark. It's a weekend, you know.
Timer. I was like,
yeah, time flew on this one. You know, it might not be a weekend when this episode's coming out, but we're recording on a weekend, and you know, I noticed the wedding ring. It's UK time. You're ahead of us. You know, people can do the math. We're asking a lot of Ben here being here, but I do have, you know, one more question before we wrap this baby up, if you don't mind.
10?
Yeah, 1 to 10. You know, this one might think of another one right after, but you know, what was it like, you know, when you saw Flash get pulled away? That they kind of just pulled the blanket out on it, and I love Flash games. You know, what was it like going from Flash to VR, and what did you do in between? Because it doesn't sound like as soon as Flash ended, you went right to VR. It sounds like there might have been a little bit of a gap there. So, what was that?
Yeah, it's a good question. The it although the plug was pulled eventually, the kind of writing was on the wall for a while. You know, I think when I was first in Flash, there was a lot of hype about it. You know, there were companies getting involved with it. You know, sort of big parent companies of some of these smaller companies. So there was excitement and people willing to put some money into, you know, try and cash in big, and that kind of started to dry up as the years went on. So there was still money to be made, but it wasn't as good. So it was getting kind of progressively worse. So it felt a bit like a sinking ship for a while. I know some people, you know, still making lots of money even towards the end, but personally, I found it sort of harder. So in about 4 or 5 years ago now, I did a Kickstarter to make a Unity version of one of my Flash games, which was, the old game was called Starfighter Disputed Galaxy. So it was like a space shooter game, a top-down space shooter. So I did a Kickstarter to make a Unity version of that, which I did and still am working on. But I don't think that was ever going to be a huge game, just partly because, you know, flat screen games harder to even make a noise there. Space genre very overdone, but it's, you know, it's got some sort of dedicated followers. So I've just been doing that for a while, and I put some VR support in that as well. So that's my first sort of foray into VR. But, you know, it's only Steam PC VR. It's, you know, it would be too much work to port that over to Quest. So yeah, so I've kind of just been kind of, you know, I've been making some sales from that, but you know, just kind of keeping myself afloat really, rather than making any waves. You know, so when Dragon Fist kind of started to, you know, I think after I tried VR in Starfighter, you know, I felt like this is the place for me, you know, and I think when I made Dragon Fist and I started getting offers for things, and it reminded me of the old Flash days, really. Getting random emails from people. I know before even launch, I had quite a big publisher interested in Dragon Fist, and that was all cool. And then they pulled out, which was heartbreaking. And then the game released in December, like I said, and then I started getting VR companies approaching me and things like that. So which again reminded me of the old days. And in fact, Pico, as in the Pico, the headset maker, they one of my old Flash game contacts, a guy called Justin, turns out he now works at Pico. So that kind of got some of the old people from there had moved on to VR. And in fact, I mentioned Kickstarter. I remember when I did the Kickstarter, the head of outreach there was someone I dealt with in Flash games. So I think a lot of of these old contacts have kind of moved on into places where they still crop up, if you like, still useful sometimes.
No, that's awesome. I agree. I think the transition, I never would have thought of it from Flash dev to VR, but that makes so much sense. It's like there's this whole developer community that had a
lot of them had some really good shit.
They're talented. I said the blanket pulled out. You said it's more like a sinking ship, but the writing was on the wall regardless. It's like these people, they had to go somewhere, and there's a lot of talent. So it makes sense that VR, this growing niche, it's the perfect spot for them.
Well, in the old Flash days, it was always a bit weird because there was people like me, sort of solo developers making things with crudely drawn things on screen, but then the other side were these big companies. So like a lot of them in sort of San Francisco and things, and a lot of them knew people at Facebook, or their companies were owned by big Chinese companies and stuff. So there's always this bit of a thing by little guys like me, and then sort of these huge companies with thousands of employees, and almost VR feels a bit like that. But it is a bit different in that, of course, there are small studio. There's almost a bit more money in VR than there was in Flash, or there's a bit more potential, I think, because the games aren't all free. I think that's the crux of it.
And we're only seeing the beginning of the whole VR market. I mean,
leather helmet phase.
Yeah. So I mean, it's got really, once we hit that mainstream level, things are going to be a lot different. But no, it's a great opportunity for anybody wanting to get into the industry. It's like, you've heard developers say it, we've heard other people say it. It's like, now's the perfect time.
Yeah.
It might not be as easy, 5 years from now.
And even if your first game doesn't get on the official store, build the skills, learn how to do it in VR, get the growing pains out of the way. I don't think the industry is shrinking, so
no,
now's the time.
I think the thing is as well, it's really fun to make VR games. I think that's the thing. Even if you make it and you don't make any money off it, it's it's quite fun seeing your creation in front of you in that VR way. You 3D model something and then you can see it for real, or essentially close as. That's it, worth doing in itself, I think.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I can't imagine how good it would feel to. I mean, but there's a shit ton of work and time that goes into pulling that all off.
Imagine one for like this, where you were making a Flash game in this game's lore and universe, 10 years ago, and now it's
when 10 years ago
immersive.
You would have never thought in a million years you'd be turning
into virtual reality.
Into virtual reality.
Yeah. And I think that you have a kind of, something that's to your benefit is you have all of these past game ideas. It's like, just how do I make them into VR? I joked, oh, maybe the next one will be a sword fighting game. Well, there's Achilles VR right there. It's.
I could do. I thought about it. Yeah, it's just the time, isn't it?
Well, hopefully we see this one hit the official store and things kind of snowball from there.
Maybe a studio of 5 or 6. We'll top it at 6. 'Cause then you start having to send memos out and shit.
Get approval and people on board. But no, this is a no-brainer for the official store. And I think getting it on the official store would just open up more opportunities for great games from Bad Olding. So
absolutely.
Is there anything you wanted to ask Stratus before we let him go?
I could probably hold him hostage
for another 2 hours,
5 minutes to an hour easily, but I'll just We'll just have to have him back.
Oh yeah, it doesn't sound like that. It's the dead of updates. So you know,
No.
next time there's some content coming, we'll have to definitely have him back on.
All right.
Ben,
Yeah.
before we let you go, is there anything else you want to say, or you know, maybe let the listeners know where they can find you on Twitter, on social media, website? I don't know if you have Discord, you know, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's a Ben Olding Games Discord. If you go to the Dragon Fist VR Kung Fu on Steam, there's a link on the forum there to the Discord. I am on Twitter, but I hardly say anything. So I've got a YouTube channel that I occasionally post something on. So
Awesome. And I'll throw the links for that in the show notes in the episode description. So if anybody's listening to this, they want to go join that Discord, I'll put the link right in the episode
Probably
description.
push the Discord harder than the Twitter for sure.
Yeah.
Never get a tweet.
That's funny. So no, thank you again, Ben, for joining us today. Won't lie, I'm extremely excited for these upcoming updates. You know, all the
Some
things,
of them I still got to let sink in here.
dude, the character creator and the asynchronous multiplayer and the sharing, if that all happens,
If it all comes together and I don't care if it takes years.
if we can do co-op against enemies, dude,
Yeah.
if they come at us with 3 enemies, fine, that's fine. We got me and Stratus over here, dude. This is gonna be a problem. So I'm excited for the future of this game. I'm actually more excited about this game leaving this interview than I went in, which seems to happen a lot. But I got a lot to look forward to with Dragon
I
Fist
hope
VR.
I haven't oversold it or overpromised.
No,
Yeah.
it's just a good stay tuned for any updates that may come. That's for sure.
It's if you see it, you got to play it. You
Yep.
got to play it, and then most likely you'll end up buying it for sure.
Oh yeah. So thank you again for joining us, Ben. And like I said, we'll definitely have you back on when more updates drop. And for the listeners, you know, I hope you enjoyed this week's of content, and we'll check you out next week.
Take care.
Ciao.
Thank you.